Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the webinar this evening. It's really great to have so many people online, and it's really good to welcome both David and Scott here tonight, or this morning in many cases. If Scott and David, if you guys would just like to say hi and exactly where you are at the moment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is always a pleasure for me to join these nice conversations with Scott and with Kevin's help. Last time I was in the Cayman Islands when we spoke, and my background was much more exciting than this wall here. This time I'm in Palo Alto, California, at the heart of Silicon Valley, where I will be speaking, keynoting the D10E conference on decentralization 15 minutes after our webinar ends. And I will be talking about the value of blockchain and how, at the time the first internet boom was happening 20 years ago, it created trillions of dollars of value and paved the way for the next 20 years of economic growth, even though it was just a local Silicon Valley centered phenomenon. So imagine what blockchain can do today, given how global it is. It will revolutionize and change the world. And that is also a bit of what we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, great. And yourself, Scott?
So I'm sitting here in Johannesburg. I'm at an event with the Entrepreneurs Institute. So it's entrepreneurs from all over the world that have got together, and it's been quite exciting. We've been putting together what is called a micro degree so that we can really scale and share the information of how people, we basically created the 8 steps on how to create wealth through real estate. And yep, so that's the reason I'm in Joburg at the moment, also in a hotel room.
Great, that's so good to see. I just wanted to confirm, everybody who's online, that you can see the screen, so it should be the title saying webinar with David's picture. Just if everyone can confirm with me that that's what we're seeing.
Yep.
Great, that's so great. So before we get going tonight with David, I just wanted to once again remind everyone that we really enjoy our webinars to be interactive. So please, there's a questions box. So please do put your comments in there. Thank you, Pierre, for letting me know that you can see the screen. So put your questions in there so that we can answer those at the end of the webinar. And like I did last week, I just want to share who's on the webinar tonight, and are you similar or dissimilar to everybody? So tonight, we're going to be talking about blockchain as well as Internet of Things. And so we asked the question around the Internet of Things when people signed up. And once again, you can see that the majority of people are still novices in the blockchain space, have potentially not partaken in a token sale yet. And it was very interesting to see that most of the people, more than 50% of the people tonight, know what Internet of Things is or have heard about it, but a very small percentage can say that, yes, I could develop on it. And then just the world map just showing you where all our participants are from tonight. And it's really exciting that we have such a global audience. And before we get into David, I just wanted to remind everyone that there are future webinars that are coming up on the 7th and the 14th of March, and I will be putting a link to those in the chat box, so please look out for those. And then we will also have some live events in Puerto Rico. Both Scott and David will be speaking in Puerto Rico, and then David will be coming out to South Africa. I'm in Cape Town at the moment, so it's really exciting that David will be coming out here. So without further ado, we will be going over to David, who's going to share his screen and is going to be giving a presentation before we go into the question and answer section tonight. So David, I have given you presenter rights, so over to you.
That is Thank you very much. And I will manage it differently over here. What you can do probably, as you see, what I'm gonna do right now is to maximize my window for our viewers because I am doing these kinds of tricks, right? I'm a techie, so I like that. And yes, for me, speaking at both conferences and these webinars is always a pleasure. I do like to have people connect with me. So I like to continue the conversations. And if the people attending the webinar today want to send questions after we finish, it will be wonderful to be able to answer them as well.
Could I make a suggestion, David? You've got your Twitter handle there, etc. But also, you know, people do have questions. We actively are communicating on the Telegram group, where we can keep that conversation going as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm sure you will be able to share that URL with them later on. Yep, everything 100%. That we see around us is based on the exponential growth of technology. When you see numbers very humbly growing from 0.06, 0.12, 0.25, well, you would think they won't amount to much. And actually, often a linear view of the world not only is as good as the exponential one at the beginning, but it could lead to better budgets, better resources, better promotions, except that when a given threshold is surpassed, and these numbers go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8, they really become overwhelming. And in a very noisy environment, of course, it is not easy to distinguish between what are things that you can ignore and what is the trend that you really have to keep an eye on. But when the disruptive power of exponentials really kicks in, that is when the linear interpolation doesn't hold anymore. Now, when we are looking at technologies, and I showed you the progression from personal computers to phones to smartphones and the Internet of Things, which we'll be covering today, it is important to realize that we are not talking about just a single technology, but the series of technologies that succeed one another. That is what we are looking at. That is what we are concentrating on. And the power of this is incredible. Technology is really democratizing the world and putting the power of technology in the hands of everybody. Admittedly, sometimes it arrives later than one would think. This is a picture of the picture phone presented by Bell Labs in 1964. And what today you would call Skype or Facebook Messenger or whatever else we use to communicate on video with each other came, well, something like 50 plus years later, even though this product was commercially available in the 1960s. But this relentless coevolution of humanity with technology is what really enabled us to move from an era when only one guy could decide what to do. He was the pharaoh, and he said, let's build a pyramid. Through the Middle Ages to our industrial age, and today, where the global infrastructure of communication is really enabling millions and billions of people to be proactive, to design their life, to take things in their hands, to understand the world better and better. And this kind of fine-grained understanding of the world is very important. We have to develop very resilient strategies to understand what works, what creates societies that can adapt to the changes, that themselves can be resilient as these changes disrupt the existing status quo. Computers were 50, 60 years ago, these hulking electronic brains, and exponential change turned them into ever more performing and compact and amazing tools. We are now reaching quantum scales of totally new phenomena that we are harnessing in order to be able to understand the world and act on the world ever better. The same with software, where when you turned off the computer at the end of the day, they would forget everything. And then they became a little more interactive, even though they still needed specialists to use them. But then they become easier and easier to use, colorful and aesthetically pleasing to us, liberating themselves from the dimensions of our hands as they abandoned the keyboards for us interacting with them. Started to understand our gestures, our movements, our words, and we are even moving in an era where computers can decode and analyze our thoughts, and we can command computers with our thoughts. This is both necessary and tremendously useful, because this is what makes computers disappear into the environment. And this creates incredible changes, not only from the point of view of how we work with them, but how the economic organizations that we have around us are shaped. One of the reasons why networks are replacing traditional bureaucratic hierarchies, as Fred Wilson, a leading venture capitalist in New York, says, is because of this technological change. And the Internet of Things is being born out of this evolution. The network of networks that we call Internet is very naturally transforming through these smart objects. I've been talking about these themes with companies like Cisco for many years. And it is fun to see that what has been really only on the drawing boards some time ago now is becoming a reality. If we think about electric cars and the supposed range anxiety that they induce when you don't know where you need to stop, and well, if you will find a recharging station on your trip, well, we already have solutions. What you see here on the screen is a self-driving vacuum cleaner that has no range anxiety. It can be in a home as big as you want. It will home onto the recharging station by itself, remembering where it is, and follow what it needs to do in order to do its job. And self-driving cars are an excellent example of the power of the Internet of Things. They are computers, actually supercomputers on wheels, and their entire design is changing. Cars are going to resemble nothing like the vehicles we have today, just like horseless carriages are not carriages without a horse. We call them automobiles, and they became something very different. Apart from this incredible example of the application of the Internet of Things, self-driving cars that are starting to work. Any electronic store or Apple store you go and visit today will be chock full of Internet of Things devices, whether your smart thermostat or others. And this kind of granularity that we describe the world with is what is driving the adoption of new protocols that are naturally decentralized, like the IPv6 protocol, that is going to be able to keep up with the growth of this network of networks. That is necessarily autonomous because we are only a few billion people. Already we have more mobile phones than humans, and there will be thousands and tens of thousands of IoT devices per person on the planet. And as a consequence, just like we hate it when we have to obey our phone as it wants our attention for every little thing and we turn notifications down, similarly, we are building machines that are able to take decisions for the data without human intervention. This is, for example, the nature of the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, which is one of the most complex and expensive machines ever built at 25 billion euro, and it automatically and by itself analyzes and discards 99.99% of the data that so expensively it collects, because it very well knows that no human has the time or the willingness of taking any look at that data, and only those particle collisions are shared with the scientists that have the promise of being really meaningful. And as we used the web originally for collecting data, and that gave us access to knowledge, as exemplified by Wikipedia. And as we built the Web 2.0 platforms, now most triumphantly represented by Facebook, that enabled applications to give access to our social graph, to our human connections, we will be now with IoT and the blockchain describe the entire world and its dynamic processes with the sensors that we are laying down everywhere. The networks that we will need for this to happen require tremendous bandwidth. And luckily, in an interlocking coevolution of various technologies, these networks are being now completed, and they are ready to be deployed on a global basis. The stack of applications from the physical layer to the network layer is reflected in the value of what we are doing. The value that can be tremendously complex to implement, but can be extremely easy to access. 10 years ago, when I started talking about the Internet of Things or more, I would tell people, listen, the Internet of Things will turn everything into an internet connected object. And they would tell me that I'm crazy. But Scott, you are in a hotel, and very likely the room to your hotel is not opened with a metal key. It is opened very likely with a key card that has been programmed, and the key card talks to the door talks to the server checks whether you can enter the room, and only then the door is opened. Just like I predicted, doors are now internet connected. And it is definitely the case that, as my friend Lee says, every object is going to be smart, just like our hotel doors, to the right degree in the future. Being able to leverage this data is essential. How we own the data, because the Internet of Things that has also perils. There is an excellent book called Future Crimes that talks about how various technologies can be exploited. And with the Internet of Things, it already happened. A couple of years ago, the electric grid of the Ukraine was brought down in a coordinated three-pronged attack. We have on a regular basis alerts of systems that should work well and should help us, but when Chinese webcams are sold by the millions and their admin password is hard-coded into the webcam and it leaks on the internet, that creates uncomfortable situations that we have to be able to prevent. How humans interact in a world enabled by the Internet of Things is certainly tricky. There are a lot of conversations about the extreme degree of optimization in the Amazon warehouses, where people are told where to go and what to do by their smart wearable computers. There are even now warehouses in the UK built by Tesco, one of the leading retail chains, that are dark and cold. And they are dark and cold because they are not built for humans. They are built for robots that perform 24/7 at a degree of precision that is unreachable by us. But humans and robots, nodes of the Internet of Things, can and must collaborate. One of the emerging area, very exciting developments in robotics today is exactly called that. They are called cobots. You can see one here, which has this screen with very nice and visible representations of eyes. Now, those eyes don't see, and they don't need to see. The robot's sensors are all over, but those eyes are there in order for the human operator working together with the robot to have a sense of where the robot is going to move its hands next. To know, following the sight of the robot, as it were, on the screen, that maybe he or she has to move out of the way in order not to be hurt or not to collide, at least with the robot. And this is a very subtle, but I think important hint of how today and in the future, humans and nodes of the Internet of Things, ever more intelligent devices, need to understand each other, need to collaborate, and need to augment each other's options. Now, of course, these interactions are not always completely predictable. When a television announcer enthusiastically spoke about the possibility of placing orders with the smart speaker made by Amazon called Alexa that understands your voice, and the announcer said, well, yes, and I could just say, Alexa, order a 6-pack of beer, I think, rather than Coca-Cola. Millions of smart speakers in the homes of those people who were following that particular program ordered 6-packs of beer. Now, since then, Amazon updated the Alexa device so that it more specifically recognizes and obeys the voice of the trained owner only rather than anybody. It was a fun and luckily not too disruptive example of the challenges we have had. Everybody recognizes that the way that a healthy Internet of Things can be built, that respects privacy, that respects the ownership of data, that is resilient, must be decentralized. And it doesn't matter whether you are a startup, you are an enterprise, you're a large corporation in technology. These trends, together with what we have been talking about a lot in these webinars of the promise of blockchain, must be done rapidly but responsibly. We will be able to harness the benefits of these technologies. I do believe, and that is the belief of many that I work with, that technology is a positive sum game. We are able to achieve progress in our civilization thanks to technology, and any challenge we have in the future will be solved thanks to more technology, more smarts, more people participating actively in society, and that is, I firmly believe, the way to go. So these were some opening remarks that I prepared for our conversation to then proceed, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and it was a good way to start our interactions.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, David. It's always incredible seeing what's out there, what's happening, what's already happening in the world that so many people might not even know about. You know, like for example, you're saying, I mean, there are warehouses around the world that are cold and dark. There's no reason for any humans to enter. And yeah, so essentially what we're going to do now is we're going to go into a time of some questions that I've put together for yourself, David, and then we'll hand over to Scott. So if there are any questions that any people do have, please do put those into the question box, and we will be looking to cover those at the end of the webinar. We do have a hard stop tonight because of David's presentation, but as David also said, we are always more than happy to answer questions post the webinar. So David, if we can just start with the first question, you know, with the number of converging technologies that are making a major difference in the world, not only what you've spoken about, but there are a number of other technologies around, you know, networks and sensors and the like. I mean, how are we going to see, you know, the Internet of Things using sensor technology, blockchain, and artificial intelligence coming together in a practical way? How are people going to notice that in their day-to-day lives?
I can't hear you.
David, I think you might have muted. Oh, you muted yourself, unfortunately.
Thank you. So I gave you some examples of the Internet of Things, and it is already here in some way, right? Not everybody has a self-driving vacuum cleaner, but it is just a question of going to a store and buying one and deciding that it's worth it, rather than vacuuming yourself. Almost nobody has a self-driving car today, but the benefits of that will be so overwhelming that the diffusion will be almost like an explosion of technology engulfing the planet. You know, similarly how people in the 80s were saying, oh yeah, this phone thing is great, but Africa will never have phones because there is not enough copper in the world to lay down the cables so that we could wire Africa. Guess what? No wires. So
and sorry, David, just to butt in there, it's not only no wires, but more mobile adoption in Africa than anywhere else on the planet. Well, same in China. So wherever there's no copper wires, there's actually faster adoption of technology.
Exactly, and sometimes societies that did not adopt the previous generation of technology are actually advantaged to adopt the new ones, because they don't have that much vested interest in preserving the previous one. So, for example, something like 30% of the area of Los Angeles is covered by highways and parking lots. But a society with self-driving cars can design a much better use for its land than not wasting it for cars that don't benefit people. Actually, cars kill people. So with AI is also the same. AI is already here, and I have, for example, 200,000 photos or so in my Google photo archive, and I evidently have no time labeling those photos, and I don't need to, because Google now can recognize every possible feature of a photo, and I can search by those features. So one of my favorite examples is people on a beach smiling at the sunset. And I actually have, I know because I did it, right? But I have 2 photos that correspond to that kind of search. Isn't that crazy? Because Google recognizes a sunset, recognizes people smiling, and recognizes that it is a beach. So AI is already here as well. The newest of these technologies, because the internet is 50 years old, AI is actually 70 years old. So the newest kid on the block is blockchain. And blockchain is not even 10 years old. There were precursors, but all the various solutions came together with Bitcoin, which is the first scalable application of blockchain. So we don't have to be surprised if all the pieces are not together yet. Everybody, even the experts, are still trying to wrap their heads around all the implications, let alone the interaction of these technologies. But it is going to be incredibly powerful, and it is a necessary thing, because the internet is unstoppable. The evolution of computers is unstoppable. They have to be autonomous, because we wouldn't be able to keep up with them. They have to do their own thing without us, and they cannot be centralized. There will not be, I guarantee you, there will not be a single world computer controlling everything. Very, very simple. The Chinese and the Americans wouldn't allow it, just among those 2. So if you go from one single world computer to 2, you understand that you will go to 4 to 1 million. So we have to architect everything in a decentralized manner. And what is there anything better than the blockchain to do that, and do that in a manner that we know already it works?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. If we move on to the next question that I had prepared, of course, with Wealth Migrate and the Wealthy Coin, really the big part of what we're trying to do is to look at the wealth gap. And so we do focus a lot around the emerging economies of this world. And so if we look at those emerging economies, of course, internet penetration in a lot of those countries is not really at the same level as the United States or in Europe. So you know, of course, the Internet of Things requires the internet, and so how are we going to overcome that factor, and when?
Yeah, so it will take some time for sure, but we can already see the new networks that are going to make this possible. Fifth generation networks have been designed with exactly this in mind, with 2G being voice only for mobile networks, 3G introducing data, but at speeds that only allowed human type interaction. You know, you could browse a website on 3G, you can do that, but it is hard to do, for example, YouTube videos, and certainly many devices cannot interact. 4G already enables collaboration and real-time video conferencing with many people on your phone. The 5G fifth generation mobile networks have been designed explicitly for the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communications that scale not to billions, but to tens and hundreds of billions or trillions of devices on the network at speeds that can be very high, but also with smart architectures where mesh networks can pass data from one node to another until that data arrives to the destination or is aggregated, is acted upon. Also, another important thing is that the provisioning of these networks, how they are designed and deployed and then maintained, is leveraging all the experience that we gained with the previous generations. They are easier to deploy, easier to maintain. The various nodes participating in the network require fewer, a lower level of energy. So, yes, they will be everywhere in the world, including the fact that many companies are working on literally blanketing the planet with internet access. Google is working on stratospheric balloons that bring internet all around. Facebook is thinking of satellites, as well as Tesla. And these systems are going to be extremely pervasive and allow us to reap the benefits of the Internet of Things. Mesh networks, by the way, are a keyword here. I mentioned them before in terms of how the data travels, because mesh networks are self-organizing and as a consequence are extremely compatible with blockchain applications and how they are going to be living on the network as well.
Yeah, no, great. I mean, and so how do you feel that these technologies can look at aiding the reduction in what we see at the moment in terms of inequalities of wealth and inequalities across the planet? How are these technologies going to be a part of aiding that?
Yes, there is a lot of talk about inequality today, and rightly so, because there has been a disproportionate accumulation of wealth, especially in the United States for the past, let's say, 20, 30 years, among the already wealthy at the expense of the middle and the lower classes of society. Actually, rather than concentrating on inequality, I like to concentrate on how technology uplifts people, how technology gives opportunities to those who are able to reap them because they have the desire, they have the passion, the creativity at any in any social level or income level. I want the crazy rich to try crazy rich things, like it used to be with a mobile phone. The mobile phone used to be for the crazy rich. You know, it would cost $10,000. It would last 10 minutes. It would fry your brain while you were talking, and the rich were very happy to flaunt their richness using the mobile phone. Today, the mobile phone is a tool for emancipating and empowering billions of people, taking them out of poverty through the power of communication, interconnection, knowledge, and it wouldn't have been achievable otherwise. So, and the same, you know, today people can buy a ticket to go to space. Unfortunately, only from the Russians, who are the best capitalists in the world. If you go to the Americans, they will not sell you a ticket to go to the International Space Station. The Russians will, and it costs between $30 and $50 million. And do I want to stop a rich guy or girl to buy one of those tickets because it is wasted money? No, I don't want to stop that from happening, because only by doing that we will open the frontier to everybody. And, you know, in the next, I don't know, 20, 30 years, we have the possibility of anybody going to space, like we see today in the science fiction movies.
Yes, no,
So,
I mean
Evan, there's a couple of questions that are in the chat box.
Scott, we'll get to those now. What I just wanted to turn attention quickly to look at real estate. So of course, with Wealth Migrate, the aim is to look at real estate and providing access to to really great real estate to those who haven't had access previously. But how are we going to see changes happening in the real estate space, given that our homes and our offices are going to be augmented with devices that are connected to the internet? So how are we going to see a change? What can we see that's going to really make a difference in that space?
For me, real estate is part of what I call in my analysis of network society, the manufacturing pillar. It is our ability to create ever more sophisticated dwellings through technology, and to live and work in them across the world. It is very, very natural for these to be internet connected. And there are already startups, some of them I'm advising and mentoring, that are applying Internet of Things technologies, for example, in the construction phase of a building, in order for it to be more dependable, more cost effective, reducing insurance costs, making everything more traceable, and in general, making sure that a very ancient and a very conservative industry can move and adapt to the needs of the 21st century. Real estate is not going to evenly adopt these changes. We still have technologies of 2, 3, 4,000 years ago being used in real estate. But you know, the say by science fiction author William Gibson, the future is already here. It is just not evenly distributed yet, is absolutely true in this field too. In China, for example, we've seen incredible videos of skyscrapers being built literally in 3 weeks. with very, very high standards of earthquake resistance, pollution reduction, comfort of living, and in general of quality. So there are some pretty neat things that are happening. Another technology that will take time to spread in real estate, but is going to create amazing types of buildings, is a new elevator design that is capable of moving horizontally, not only vertically, within the same shaft, or I mean the same vehicle. You are in it, and you say, okay, I'm in column 1 on level 10, and I want to go in column 4 on level 20, and the elevator takes you there, right? These are going to be incredibly liberating to architects, and probably in Dubai or Shanghai or some of these other places, we will see amazing science fiction worthy buildings pretty soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's not to mention the smart glass that I think we're going to see, and so many other things. Scott, would you like to pipe in there just in terms of what you think?
You know, guys, and for those of you, I've been playing with the polls because I'm always fascinated what people's thoughts are on where the world's going. I think one of the things that amazes me that is I'm at this conference, and I was talking to an estate agent today, and he's not actually an estate agent. He owns an entire estate agency with hundreds of estate agents. And what was really interesting talking to him was, he says, in many countries it takes over 3 months to transfer a property, and and he has to wait for his commission. Okay. Now, look, granted, with blockchain, he's probably not going to have a job anyway. But the point being is that if it was to transfer in a couple of minutes or seconds, it makes a significant difference. And so, to answer your question on real estate, I think industries like that are going to be turned on their head completely, right from construction to what type of buildings are needed to how the whole process is going to work, down to the deeds office and everything. And I almost think that it's almost a white piece of paper because the whole old system is basically broken. So yeah, I could talk about that for 2 hours, but not tonight.
No, absolutely not tonight. So if we just move on, ultimately, all this internet technology, all these devices are all require power and servers somewhere in the world. What happens when there are major events like earthquakes or power failures that are massive? How do we survive if we are very reliant on these devices?
Well, on the support infrastructure of Earth for, let's say, 490,000 years out of the 500,000 years of the history of our species. And Mother Nature is a bitch. It's not that we can trust her to care for us. She does not care. She's been killing us in the billions forever. So yeah, it's not that our technology is perfect, but we have grown to be a species that adapted to every ecological niche because of technology, and our numbers went from a few million or even less in the African continent and on the savannas or wherever we were to the almost 8 billion we are today, thanks to technology. We have to be smart about it. The only difference between the dinosaurs and ourselves is that they didn't have telescopes. And the Congress of the United States stopped funding the radio telescope looking for the asteroid is there to come to kill us because they didn't think that funding was needed. right? So if we are dumb about technology and how we want to use it, we are guaranteed to go extinct sooner rather than later. But if we are smart about it, we do have a chance of continuing on our adventure. And I rely on technology when I'm sick. I don't think that nature will take care of me. I go to a doctor. When I want to go and speak at a conference, which is on another continent, I get on a plane, and I'm pretty sure that it is going to be soaring in the sky and deliver me like magic. But it is not magic. It's science and reason, and that is what is helping us in the things that we want to do.
Just one thing on that comment, Kevin, before we move on. I was at this conference this morning, and Roger Hamilton was actually sharing. I'm sure most people have heard about how Elon Musk sent a Tesla into space last week on his rocket. Are you guys both, I presume you're both aware of that?
Yes, absolutely.
But interesting, I wasn't aware of this. Do you know it was in the boot of that Tesla?
No, it was not.
No.
Go ahead, Scott, but whatever.
In the boot of the Tesla, I suggest go and Google it, because I can't remember all the names now. I saw it this morning. There are these guys that are exactly what you've just been saying, David, around how do we protect the planet, and how are we going to effectively have a plan B for our ecosystem and everything else. And they've been trying to raise money from all over the world to be able to put their stuff up into space, and no one would pay them. And Elon Musk took it on board, and all their stuff is in his Tesla boot, and will now be orbiting the Earth for the rest of time. So I suggest everyone just goes online and Googles it, because most people have heard about the Tesla, but they didn't hear about what was in the boot.
Well, I will check it out, because there is some pretty terrible internet meme going around. Also, what is the perfect crime that you can commit by launching your car into space and putting the object of your crime in the boot? But I will tell you that there are people who are thinking of funding a Mars program by sending the private key of a Bitcoin wallet on to Mars with a lander that can prove that it has landed and the private key is accessible and uncorrupted, and then calling people who want Mars colonization to happen to just send money to that private key, to send money to that wallet. And if it is $1 million, it's not worth it. If it is 10 million, it's not worth it. If it's 100 million, it's not worth it. But I bet you between $1 billion and $10 billion, it is worth to go and get it, right? And that is a very smart and rather simple way that Mars colonization can happen. To bet on the greed of some crazy group that says, oh my God, there is $50 billion sitting on the Martian surface. I want to go and get it, right? So there are some funny ideas around this.
Yeah, that takes Peter Diamandis' X Prize to another level there.
That's definitely a different X Prize. So, David, the next thing here I got here is a scenario for you. So the scenario is this: my AI assistant knows my current location and the location of the meeting that I'm about to have, and so speaks directly to an autonomous car using a predefined smart contract. A ride is arranged. I'm notified that the car will be picking me up. The car drives me to my meeting while my assistant briefs me on the meeting. I arrive at the meeting location, the car drops me off, and payment is automatically made. When do we experience that?
So, what is it? 2018. Okay. In some parts of the world, this is going to be the case already in a couple of years, because everything that you described is already available. It's just a question of putting it all together smartly so that the user experience is smooth, and paving the way from the point of view of regulatory support that, you know, something like this is not killed before it has a chance of being born. Regulatory and policy support for these new technologies is essential. Without that, they will have a hard time developing. And there are countries who decide to be on the rear guard of technology adoption. They want to hold their societies back, whether it is because they want to protect an incumbent industry. Like, for example, the Minister of Transportation of India declared that they will never want to adopt self-driving cars because they need to protect the jobs of the tuk-tuk drivers. And evidently, nobody told the Minister of Transportation in India how many tens of thousands of people die in India in car accidents every year. I would guess actually it's over 100,000 given the population, and that those people shouldn't die because self-driving cars will be, you know, orders of magnitude safer than human-driven cars. Or in Italy, where even Uber is prohibited because taxi drivers and their cooperatives and the unshakable technology solutions that they adopted, you know, 100 years ago, are more important than not the future of the country. So I already mentioned Dubai, Shanghai, and Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona are the three places where this is most likely to happen. Is both Dubai and Shanghai and Phoenix, Arizona already have self-driving car services or tests, and Google Assistant can do everything you just described. Smart contracts, you know, I'm now here. We are working very hard to make them ubiquitous and easy to manage and deploy. So yeah. Now, when it is going to be anywhere I get off, you know, anywhere I get off in the world, my phone works. Okay, I get off. I know there will be a certain infrastructure. One of those pieces of infrastructure I now am primed to believe will be available is Uber, right? So I land and I take out my phone and I order an Uber car to go to my Airbnb. That's how I do it. Is the scenario you described going to be universal in 2 years? Absolutely not. It will take probably 10 years or more for it to be universal, but it will be fast.
It's interesting. It's interesting what you say about Dubai. I mean, they've got, you know, from a government perspective, by 2020 they want the entire country on blockchain, and by 2025 they want all cars autonomous, and by 2030 they want at least 70% of their construction to be done by 3D printing. I mean, those are the country goals that they've set. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, thanks so much, David. I think, Scott, if we can hand over to you to just quickly go through the wrap up before we open up to questions from the audience. There are a few questions here. So, Scott, if we're over to you, and then we'll go through those questions.
Great. Let me just get my screen up here. Sorry, just 2 seconds. And then I'll swap over. Okay, I've got the screen coming up now. Right, I need to share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Oh, hang on, there we go. So let's, Kevin, you didn't do the 8 points, eh?
No.
Cool. So guys, just a couple of things. One thing that's really exciting is the white paper is literally being finished today. The lawyers in San Francisco are giving it the final once over. And we talk a lot in the white paper around this, but I've had the privilege of meeting Ray Kurzweil, and you know, he's one of the best predictors of the future and where it's going, including AI. And what was interesting when I met him at Singularity University 2 years ago was he said the best way to pick where value is going to be or where opportunity lies is where you look for major trends and where those intersections are happening. And we believe there's 8 major trends which are intersecting in or around 2020, and it's why we believe we can empower 1 billion people. So the first one is gamification.
Before you go, yep. Scott, I asked that when you're sharing the screen, could you share just the PowerPoint? Because we can see your entire screen around it, and it's quite small on the screen.
Oh, apologies. Yeah.
Just to share the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm going to run through this quickly. We don't have time tonight to go into them in detail, but in simple terms, gamification and learning while doing. So it's going to fundamentally change education. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies, which we've spoken about a lot, is going to increase trust and reduce friction costs. Social commerce and collaborative investing is going to increase people's ability to make returns and reduce risk. Personalization. People have had enough of the plan for everybody. They want personalized plans for wealth, you know, for themselves, and they want to have a meaningful connection with their investments. There's a rise of the middle class. Over 3 billion people around the world are joining the global economy, and they want the same things that wealthy people want. There's globalization. We spoke about volatility tonight, and people want to diversify now across countries, assets, and currencies. There's social pressure to democratize the access to wealth and really empower the 99%. And I really look forward to sharing with you, both David and Kevin, the wealthy test that we've designed and the 8 steps to wealth course that we've made. And then the investors wanting to have a purposeful impact, I think, is really what people are looking at. What's fascinating for me is that, you know, the crypto space, you know, continues to go up and down and is very, very volatile. But what's coming through clear as day, and I know Scott Myers is online, and the feedback I've been getting from everyone I talk to is that what people are really looking for is real businesses that have real track records. And Kevin updated these numbers now, but we've got members from 111 countries, investors from 44 countries. We've had $68 million go through the platform, over 1,700 transactions, you know, and it's all on the blockchain. And the one that I'm probably proudest of is that we've got a higher than 70% reinvestment rate. So we must be doing something right. And so that just brings me to a quick conclusion around the 3 things to look for in a successful ICO. The first one is an existing business that's making money. So for the last 2 years, we made more than $1 million. And this year, we're well on track to double and triple that. The second thing is, and why I say make money is that, you know, it's all good and well to have these wonderful, fanciful ideas as to how you're going to change the world. But you also need to know how to make money. Otherwise, you know, it's just going to be a good idea. The second thing is an existing team. And again, you know, it's very hard to build a team. A lot of people think that you're going to write a white paper and get a couple of people together and just go and execute no matter what happens in the world economy. But to have a really good world-class team, and, you know, David's been talking tonight. I was just on the phone with Richard Titus and, you know, the rest of the board from a real estate perspective, from a technology and market perspective, compliance, and even the education. It's really, really important. And this is not even talking about the leadership team and people that we've now got based, you know, full-time people that are based, 60 people on 5 continents. And then the third one for me, which I think is the most important, is supply and demand. And ultimately, it's simple economics. If the supply is fixed, then the demand is what's going to drive, you know, the effectively the value and mass consumer adoption. And again, what's really important here is that a lot of great ideas are out there, particularly in this ICO blockchain space, but are they really solving a global problem? Like, is there really a need for some of the stuff that people, you know, are building? And, you know, from our perspective, there's clearly a need. I mean, if you can look at our members signing up, it's growing by a massive number per day. And you can see what happened here. We actually had more people sign up in January than we had in the whole of 2016. It was quite funny. And then also Kevin did this. And that's where our members are based around the world. So we're in 111 countries now. There's only 193 countries on the planet. And that's, you know, steadily growing. And then the investors, and then the transactions is also important, because you take the last 3 years, you know, we were at 179 transactions in 2015, 302 in 2016, and 908 in 2017. And as a minimum target, we're aiming for over 2,000 this year. And then you can see where the investors come from. not quite as colorful as the members. So one of the things that the Wealthy Coin is going to do is to enable engagement, education, and build trust so that members have the trust to be able to invest, and we can grow that investor base. And yeah, to finish off, Peter Diamante says the biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. The wealth gap every single year. People talk around how income inequality is getting worse and worse. I've got some slides that I shared on Tuesday night if you want to watch that recording of the webinar. If there's any ladies online, you won't be very pleased to know that you own less than 10% of the world's wealth. If there's any millennials online, you'll know that you've definitely got the back end of the bad end of the wrong stick. And equally, unless you live in Australia, England, or Europe, or America, you've also got the wrong end of the stick. So it's a global problem, and it's getting worse, and someone has to do something about it. And that's really where the Wealthy Coin comes in. This is the global plan that we're putting together with the Wealthy Exchange, and it really unlocks the entire ecosystem. And again, for tonight, I'm not going to go into those details, but it's now all in the white paper. And by tomorrow, if you're on the Telegram groups or the WhatsApp groups, we'll be making sure, or just go to wealthy.io and sign up, and we'll make sure that you've got it. And then there's also a great use of funds there, where it explains how we're using the funds. And it's really important to see that there's a step level here. So as we raise more funds, we will be able to do more, including a $10 million investment, but we'll be able, in real estate, we'll be able to do more to solving the wealth gap. And I'm not going to talk too much around the timing, just to the point that the white paper is now ready, and it'll be all action go as of tomorrow, including the bounty program really being turned on properly now. And I think that's all from my side, Kevin. In terms of the next steps, I'll leave the screen up if you want to ask some of those questions that you had. And I'm also conscious David's needs to be on stage soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. In an unfortunate event here, my computer has crashed, and so I'm now coming in from my mobile phone. So I hope everyone can hear me.
Do you want me to? I can hear you. Do you want me to look at the questions quickly?
So Scott, if you could do that, because unfortunately right now I cannot see them, because the mobile app unfortunately doesn't allow for that, and a Mac is not supposed to crash, but this one has. So Scott, if you could please look at those questions.
Cool. Okay, so someone said, yeah, I'm mining. I own many coins and tokens, and I understand the new cryptocurrency and economy. I'm still finding it hard to see actual occupational opportunities unless you are technically minded. How do you see it? I'm not sure if you want to answer that, David. I know we did a great webinar in December that Kevin has cut up into small little videos with yourself and Richard Titus and Michael Turpin around what you guys look for in ICOs. But I don't know if you just want to briefly go over what you look for.
If I understand the question correctly, occupational opportunities, meaning how can people find a job in this new exciting world of blockchain and token sales, etc.
Yeah,
there are incredible opportunities, and to the point where the most important gating factor to deliver on the promises of what we talk about is the lack of human resources, human talent. And yes, obviously technical talent, but not only. Legal, marketing, graphical design, copywriting, cultural mediation, all kinds of skills are needed to successfully design a blockchain business and successfully design and implement a token and then support, the token and the network of participants. There's so much that is needed, and really, what is wonderful is that sometimes there are these silly job searches that say we want somebody who is specialized on 3 different things, and they have 10 years of experience, and they are not more than 25 years old. So that person supposedly started when he was 15 on those 3 crazy specialized fields, and then built a 10-year experience. and now you want to hire him or her for very little money. So I wouldn't even respond to those ads. But what is wonderful about a blockchain is that nobody asks you for 10 years of experience. Nobody has 10 years of experience. We are building this now. We are really applying smarts and passion now. And anybody wanting to join us, they are so welcome. There is absolutely no doubt about it.
David, I want to add to that. Someone asked a question, and I'm just putting the dates up, both of our next 2 webinars in March, so you can see the dates there, and equally the live events around the world from Puerto Rico to South Africa. And why I want to add to that is that, you know, my uncle taught me 20 years ago that the one-eyed man can lead the blind, and a lot of people get quite caught up in all the different acronyms and all the different words, and it sounds really scary and all that. Now, Migrate was built on blockchain, and to be fair, we've been investigating that for the best part of 3 to 4 years, and we've been live since October 2016. But in June the 1st last year, we did not know and had never even heard of an ICO. And my point being is that, I'm just backing up what you're saying, is that the world is changing so fast, and that people are prepared to share knowledge. You can learn very, very quickly. And so, you know, just to empower people that they really can get up to speed. There's a wealth partner today that I met, one of our wealth partners who was at this event, and you know, he literally said to me 6 months ago he had no idea what cryptocurrency was. Now he owns 27 coins. So I just want to give people confidence that it's possible.
And I'd like to add on to that. I was at a blockchain symposium just the other day where the ex-CEO of a very large company that actually ran the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is now working for Consensus, which is an Ethereum-based company. And all of the talk around this blockchain symposium was around the fact that it needs more than just blockchain developers. There are many different aspects where people can contribute. So I am back up on the on my computer. So there is another question that just says, when will we have a true bankless system, all done through virtual currencies? That's what Sean has to ask.
The new solutions do not necessarily need to kill the old. The new solutions have the responsibility to show their benefit in a more inclusive and empowering manner, and then the old system will just potentially wither away by its own incapacity of adapting to these new needs. So can I already have members of my team anywhere in the world and pay them in Bitcoin or Ether or any other cryptocurrency? And can they receive that in real time rather than either being exposed to the vagaries of a wire transfer or the reversibility of a PayPal payment that is sometimes held up, and then you have to justify the payment to this gatekeeper in the middle? Not only I can, but I do. I have members of my teams who are in Pakistan, who are in Venezuela, who are in Argentina, who are in New Zealand, and that is what I do. Now, do I also pay them in fiat? Yes, because they have to buy groceries, they have to pay rent, and very importantly, they have to pay taxes. And that will be the last bastion of the old system. As long as you have to pay taxes in fiat currency, that is what will link you to this old system. And as soon as some countries accept to be paid in crypto, that will open the floodgates incredibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just quickly, sorry, Kevin, just quickly, Sean Quinn asked David which would be the list of ICOs. It's a private question, I think, But I think it's probably something that David would be prepared to share with the wealth partners when we have the private wealth partner dinners. But I don't think it's something that we want to put publicly, because that's, it's private. In terms of where we're going. So
sorry,
yeah.
I didn't understand the question. What was it about the ICOs?
No, it's just in terms of which ICOs that you like investing in, etc. And my request is that we rather leave that for the wealth partner dinners than sort of putting it out publicly, if you want to. Yeah.
So,
of course. One important thing is that the criteria are not that hard, and yes, there are a lot of scammers, and you cannot compete with them because the scammers don't have real work to do. They can dedicate 100% of their energy to scamming, spamming, promoting, and then when you dig a little bit deeper beyond the marketing hype and the beautifully designed stuff, there is nothing substantial, right? You can't talk to the team, or the team is incoherent, and there is no depth to the project. But they can be very, very loud because they can afford it, right? So paradoxically, I like to find projects that may be less well known, but are very, very concrete, and where I know that they are going to deliver what they promise. And as a consequence, their tokens may be valuable not only at the time of the ICO, but further on in months and years of hard work following the token sale as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I see that Lee, who heads up our Dubai office, has just said that the UAE exchange, as well as Mashrak Bank, are both using Ripple and implementing that to actually manage their remittances, given that a large number of those people living in Dubai actually are expats. So, I mean, it definitely is something that I think is changing, and we're going to see changing as this develops. But as you have said, David, until you can pay your taxes in a currency other than fiat, there's still some way to go.
Yeah, and I think, guys, just to put in perspective, I'm almost willing to bet you that no one on this call knows who UAE exchange is unless you live in Dubai. But I guarantee you, anyone that's ever flown through an airport knows what TravelX is, and UAE exchange owns TravelX, and they've got something like 16,000 branches around the world. So I just want to put it in perspective that TravelX is owned by UAE exchange.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, Kevin.
We pretty much are coming to the end of the questions here. Sean has also just asked price of Bitcoin by end of 2018.
I don't have a problem going out on a limb. It is not a financial advice. It is not a recommendation to buy or sell. But I personally believe that with more and more people getting excited about blockchain and Bitcoin, and with more and more infrastructure, including from incumbents that want to open their own networks to what can be done through blockchain, we will see tremendous value. And as a consequence, the exchange rate of Bitcoin is going to appreciate. Do we see a 10 times increase to $50,000 like we've seen a 10 times increase in 2017? I actually do not exclude that possibility. I don't, because the network value of the total cryptocurrencies and tokens today of $300 billion or something like that can easily go into the trillions of dollars as we see month after month new applications, new platforms, new reasons to be excited about this technology.
Yeah, so guys, I just
do not take out loans to buy Bitcoin. Do not indebt yourself to buy Bitcoin. Okay, please.
Yeah, guys, I just shared the results there. It was just interesting what different people thought would happen based on where things are going. I presume you can still see my screen. Sorry, it was messing around when I tried to show the poll there. Kevin, I'm conscious of the time. How are we looking?
So Scott, we've other than there's a question that's actually just come in. We've gone through all the questions tonight. That's just saying, I've come across an interesting ICO in Australia called My Smart Property, where they want to use the blockchain to remove real estate agents by linking property buyers and sellers directly. Richard, I mean, thanks for that comment. It's not really a question. What we are definitely going to see is blockchain and blockchain-enabled apps or companies, moving into the space of many traditional spaces where there are currently middlemen. And so, yes, this is most likely going to happen. And in the real estate space, I foresee many different iterations and different options out there in terms of the blockchain. So, it is going to come. It is something that that is going to most likely take some time for traditional industries where people are not used to it, and the fact that the blockchain infrastructure might be difficult for some people. But as Scott's just put up the ecosystem layout on the screen there, and I don't know, Scott, if you want to go over and explain exactly.
All I just wanted to say for everyone who's online, this is actually wrong. So we've updated this. It shouldn't be crowdfunding sites. It should be partners. And because if you look here, it's got private equity, crowdfunding, private real estate portfolios. To be honest, it could be property. It might be the guys that you just mentioned in Australia. What most of these platforms have is solutions for in-country. And where we see it is that we will be able to help people that are what I refer to as the old world. We'll be able to help people in crowdfunding sites that don't want to just be stuck in one country, want to be able to do cross-border, and we'll be able to integrate with other blockchain solutions that want to be part of a trusted global network. So again, I could talk about this for probably 2 hours, but I think on the whole, you can see while Migrate is sitting there, it's a mere component of the greater system.
Absolutely. So if we can just end off with a final word from you, David, before you go over to have your discussion, your keynotes at D10E in Silicon Valley. End us off tonight with something exciting.
Well, I am absolutely excited about Wealth Migrate as an investor and an advisor, and I am absolutely excited about the white paper being ready, because so many people who are interested in understanding the details of the Wealthy token are going to be able to dedicate energy and time to do so, and then ask questions, and we will be able, and the Wealth Migrate is going to be able to go to the next phase. I'm also excited about coming to South Africa to be together with you in person, as well as with those who are going to participate in our sessions and dinners. And with respect to the topic today, I have a certain conviction of the unstoppability of technological trends, and I also link social structures to be an expression of these technological trends. And the empowering technologies that we see around us are going to design a new society that is going to be inclusive, emancipating, and empowering for individuals in a way that it hasn't been seen before. So a lot of what we do together with the people who follow the webinar, with you, the questions, with me speaking, with me listening also, is to prepare, not only passively waiting, but to prepare and actively be part of the creation of this new society. So that is what I am very excited about.
Great, thank you so much, David. And it's always a pleasure to have these webinars, to speak to you, Scott. It's really been great, and we look forward to seeing everybody on the 7th again for the next webinar. But as Scott has already said, we have a Telegram channel where we're very active, and you can ask any questions there.
And if you watch the recording, it will be click on the link below. If you're watching the recording, click on the link for the Telegram group. I just want to finish off with what David said. It reminds me of Dr. Dolph DeRosa, who says there's 3 types of people that happen when the world's changing. The first type doesn't know what's happening. The second type watches what's happening, and the third type gets involved.
Absolutely.
And we want to be of the third type.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It'll be great. It's great to have you all here tonight. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you again soon. Good night, everyone. Good morning.